to any questions that you may have.
Lovely.
So before I begin, I just wanted to congratulate and welcome member Glenda Fryer to the Waitemata Local Board. And my apologies for not switching on my camera. I just been having issues with Skype. So we are presenting a report to provide you with advice on the options that we looked at, to give you guidance on how to consider information provided by members of the public during deputation and public forum. So the report also provides relevant information relating to local board standing orders, the purpose of the board meeting, and information on the role of public when attending local board meetings. It also outlines 4 options that and providing advice to the board to consider. The option recommended in this report is option 1, which requires that the local board confirms its intention to receive information. The staff will then review the tabled information before attaching to the minutes. Information received either before or at the meeting by the local board are assessed by staff against Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act and the local board standing orders before they can be included as minutes. Guidance on how this assessment is conducted can be included as an appendix to standing orders. This option will require amending the standing orders to include a new appendix. If the local board agrees to with the recommended option, then staff will develop a draft appendix for your consideration and approval. We also looked at the allocated 3 minutes for public forum. This was raised at the 17th of August business meeting, and provided advice on that in the report that the allocation of time is to be kept as is, because we believe the board has the option to agree to extend the time to allow speakers to finish their presentation. So I take the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Is there anything Warwick or Shirley want to add?
Mr. Chairman, there were 2 or 3 points that I thought might be helpful, just from my own observations. The first point, or the first observation I'd make in reading the Waitemata Local Board standing orders, and they reflect generally other standing orders as well, is that they, when it comes to deputations and public forums, the standing orders are written with the thought of speakers in mind. And there's nothing in the standing orders which refers to tabled documents or material. So that's just one point to make. The next point, and this might seem like a bit of nuancing, is that the issue that we're talking about is not about what's included in the minutes. The standing orders are quite clear that the minutes simply need to record the subject matter and the name of the person presenting, and so what the board is doing at the moment already complies. What we're talking about is what is published to the council website as attachments to the minutes. So that's the second point that I'd make, is that there's a distinction there. And I'd also note in that sense that everything that forms part of the record of the meeting has to be archived, and so anything that is tabled is sent off to council archives anyway. And probably the final point is that looking at the issues that have arisen at through the board meetings, it seemed to me most complications arise when people personalise criticism. And I just make the point that it's fine to criticise council policy, criticise board decisions. It's when people start personalising criticisms that you start to get this feel of, look, this is being a bit offensive. So those are the points that I would make.
Thank you, Warwick. Shirley, is there anything you want to add? Okay, any questions from board members?
Graham Gunthorpe.
Yes, Graham.
Warwick, you mentioned that anything that has been tabled gets archived within council. Just to clarify the definition of tabled, does that mean that it has to be formally received by the board and then it's considered tabled?
Look, I'm not sure. It used to be a practice in the past of simply passing resolutions almost by rote that such and such be received, this report be received, or this presentation be received. But my view would be that if the board allows it, even if there isn't a resolution to be considered as part of the meeting, then it probably does form part of the record of the meeting in terms of archive purposes. So if the board feels that something ought not to be part of the record of the meeting, it needs to be clear about that and even pass a resolution not accepting it.
So the resolution on screen, Warwick, does that meet your? Do you agree that that is an acceptable solution to this, where the chair is able to exclude items before they become part of the official record, or does it need to happen at the meeting?
Well, the first part of your question really relates to one of the points I made, that at the moment the standing orders say that the chair has the ability to decline anybody who's offensive, for example. But doesn't say anything about material that's proposed to be tabled. And it would make sense that the same criteria and values are applied to those things that are tabled. But I think this is part of what we need to look at when we're talking about adding an appendix to the standing orders, is to cover off what needs to be in the standing orders that applies to tabled materials.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's received applies to something that could be verbal. It does. We often receive, and we have today received verbal presentations. And also things in other media can be received. It's really the question about documentation in the minutes, and we'll hopefully resolve that today, subject to then the staff drafting something that makes it clear for all of us.
So, sorry, Richard, can I just get a yes or a no from Warwick on that question? Do you think the resolution on the screen there is suitable for the purpose that we're trying to do here?
Hold on. Oh, it's gone.
Can't see the screen.
Yeah. I agree that the information that has been formally received as tabled information by the local board be attached to the published minutes. Well, if the board actually passes a resolution receiving the information, then that makes sense. Noting that staff will review and redact or omit any material breaches of the GOIM or other legislation standing orders. So it is subject. So the board is saying that, yes, anything that is formally received will be attached, published on the website as attachments to the minutes, but it is subject to this filtering, if you like, by the staff. And I was part of that discussion, and we kind of asked ourselves, well, why would you turn something down? And really, it's just two things. One is you would turn it down if it's information that would be withheld under Lagoya, and the obvious example there is information relating to a confidential part of the meeting. And the second thing that you might turn something down is that it's contrary to standing orders. And then the second part of the resolution requests that staff develop a new appendix outlining the principles, criteria and process for minute attachments to be added to the standing orders for the local board consideration and approval. Yes, I think that does need to happen, and I'd be happy to be part of that.
So that's a yes, you think they are appropriate. Thank you.
Yes.
May I ask a question? Alex Bonham.
Yeah.
This is just around the timing of something being tabled. In order to just know that I'm happy to receive it, I'm sure in 99.9% of the time I would be. I would want to see it before I'd received it. So I'm just wondering about the issue of having items tabled or writing tabled that perhaps wasn't exactly the presentation, but was perhaps reference material for the presentation, put on the minutes. What do you do in those circumstances, Warwick? Do you require that information to be sent in advance, or how do you manage it?
I don't think there's one set rule for that. My understanding of the previous experience of the board is that it was tabled at the meeting and then it was looked at after the meeting. That created some issues and problems, and so the chair asked if presenters could provide it before the meeting so that it wouldn't create the same sort of issues. But that's for you to decide, not me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, part of the issue is you might receive the 3-minute or whatever we decide on presentation may be quite unexceptional, but the request is to table other documents as well that may contain material that breaches those things. And as far as I'm concerned, defamation law and human rights law are also important in this regard to keep people safe. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether this thing this new A puts too much of a burden on staff, much of an administrative burden, too much of a time burden sort of thing.
Carlos, did you want to?
Yeah, I can respond to that. Yes, Julie, that would be a task on assessment that we would have to do based on the criteria that would be set up and on the in the appendix. So yes, that will add workload to us. Comparing to option 2, which was to receive the information in advance and assess in advance, I feel this is better, that we, once the board decides to receive the information and give indication to staff that this this information is relevant and valuable and must be attached to the minutes, then we will do that assessment. Just to add, just to comment on the previous conversation around the table documents. Generally, as staff, so when we table new information, that information is circulated to all board members for your consideration. So if new information came through one of my reports, I will circulate that by way. Usually in physical meetings, we will have printouts delivered to you so that you can have this information and consider it before you make a decision. I would suggest that will be one of the key principles in the appendix, is that tabled documents should be circulated to all of you for your consideration and also to enable you to ask further clarification questions of the speakers.
Yeah, that would be my comment too, that the appendix becomes quite important, and to protect staff in terms of how they make their decisions, the appendix should be as explicit and as carefully worded.
Kia ora, Warwick, it's Corinne here. Just going back to Alex's point about the time frame though, if we're saying it's before the meeting, do we have to be specific that it's, a day or two before the meeting or something like that?
With the recommendation in front of you, there's no requirement for it to be provided before the meeting.
That was one of the other options. Yeah. I just think people who present material we haven't seen before are at risk of us not resolving to table it because we're not sure that it's going to be useful and appropriate. So rather than set a deadline, it's obviously the sort of thing you can address in the standing order appendix to give a bit of guidance. If you're presenting something pretty complex and controversial, it sort of helps the board to have seen it beforehand, so they're asking the right questions at the meeting and feel comfortable about it being tabled and minuted.
And can I add here through the chair? So if the if the information, and depends on the volume of the information provided, if the members want to consider it, there is an option for the chair to adjourn the meeting to give that opportunity for the board members to review the materials before considering it and making a decision. In terms of the timing before the meeting to receive the information, the challenge with that is also the business meeting agendas are usually put out to the public 2 working days prior to the meeting. which will leave the speakers and the public with limited time to prepare their presentations and send them for review. Also, having subject matter experts available for back and forth conversations to go back to the public to say, well, has to change, this has to be redacted. It's not feasible and will put lots of pressure on staff and on the public as well.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I would be happier even just to have tabled information an hour before the meeting. I mean, it's just because it's much easier to ask good questions if there is a lot of supporting documentation, to have read it before you hear from the speaker. If the speaker gets through all of this information in any case, then they are already being accurately recorded by the meeting. But if it's substantially more than that, like with Boopsy's video today, it was tremendously helpful to be able to look at it first. So just thinking about what is most helpful for the board to do the best job they can and be responsive to the community, I think tabling the information at least an hour before public forum, but preferably longer, would be great. And I wondered, yes, I would like to propose that we consider that instead of it's not too late to do so.
That is option 2 or 3, and our initial discussion was we prefer option 1. So.
Yeah, Alex, I think that we can recommend that, like we can encourage that without mandating it.
Yes.
So, as I understand it, there'll be a future consideration of the appendix, of a draft appendix. So maybe that could be a matter for that discussion, and if it's people feel strongly enough about it, it could be included in the appendix.
Yeah, I mean, Alan and Gail, for instance, for this meeting had problems getting stuff in a day beforehand because it was quite complicated, and it's really hard to hit on a hard and fast rule. But certainly the advice you've got, it's so much easier for us if we had the opportunity to study it beforehand. We can ask the right questions and so on, and really people who are putting material in a risk that we won't resolve to receive it as tabled information because we're just not comfortable that all of it is in fact useful for us. But I think that's better to put that carefully into the appendix to standing orders rather than having a debate now in which we move amendments about should be 1 hour or 2 hours or 12 hours. It does a little bit depend on the complexity of the material and the circumstances of the submitter. As Carlos has quite rightly said there, you haven't got much time to do it anyway. I agree with you, Richard. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll move that the Waitemata Local Board agree that information has been formally received as tabled information by the local board be attached to the published minutes, noting that staff will review and redact or omit any material breaches of the Algoima, other legislation or standing orders, which is option 1 of the agenda report. And second, request that staff develop a new appendix outlining the principles, criteria and process for minute attachments to be added to this, to be added to the standing orders for the local board's consideration and approval. Do I have a seconder for that?
Julie?
Oh, sorry.
Somebody said yes.
Yeah, Corinne did.
Corinne, okay. So just speaking to that, we've had a bit of an informal discussion about it now, and for most boards this issue of tabled information has not become an issue, but it has for us, and we want the people who are submitting to us to have clear rules and us to have clear rules that are fair. I was personally delighted to see option 1 that and it was reflected in the question. Are the staff sure they want to take this on? Because I think it's preferable to me me making a judgment with the suspicion that I might make it on political grounds. So I'm delighted to have that burden lifted off my shoulders. But we do stress again that there is the option at the time of the meeting, if we're uncertain about the information, just received it, we're not sure if there's some stuff in there that is inappropriate, we don't need to. We can receive it, and that as I said, that includes verbal. But if we table it, then it then goes to the staff to check that it all go in. As I said, the staff report, you said it was mainly Algoma and standing orders. I think those are the main points it needs to meet. But I'm serious that defamation and human rights law related to racism and hate speech may need also to be applied in that judgment, and that's why it's referred to other resolution. Corinne, do you want to speak to this?
No, I just really want to support that this is put into place, because we know that there's been a number of incidents where there's been discrepancies around tabled information. I think it's really necessary that this is put in place for the board and for the public.
Thank you. And Graham, you've given notice of an amendment.
Yeah, thanks. I would like to move that we increase the time allotted for each public forum item to a maximum of 5 minutes.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Oh, I'm happy to second it if I'm eligible to do that, having been the mover. Is that all right? In terms of process? Presumably.
It'd be a friendly amendment, wouldn't it?
Yes, very friendly to Graham, yes.
If you want it, I would think.
Well, yeah, no.
Okay, so that's fine. Do you want to speak to it, Graham?
Yeah, please. I don't feel overly strongly about this. However, I do know that some members of the public have wanted extra time. 5 minutes does seem reasonable if we are more strict on the amount of time that running over. For example, it's a hard stop, and questions. No, sorry, and then followed by questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers on the amendment? The amendment? Say aye.
Aye.
I have another amendment.
Well, no, we haven't dealt with this one yet. Are there
sorry.
any votes? What are the votes against the amendment?
Against.
Okay, that's carried. Okay, by majority, that's fine.
Sorry, sorry, Richard. Can we just have a division on that?
Okay.
There was a number of voices.
Yep. So you got that ready, Robin? And you need to put Glenda on it as well.
Yes, I do have it ready, so I'll just go around the table if that's okay.
This is a virtual table, of course. Yeah.
Yes, via virtual. Okay, so member Evanjo Christie?
Against.
Member Bonham?
4.
Member Gunthorpe? 4.
4.
Member Leone?
4.
Member Northey?
4.
Member Sandilands?
I find it really hard to have a strong opinion. I'll abstain.
Okay, and Member Fry, I'll just add you manually.
Yes, so that's 4.
Okay.
So that's carried 5-1 with 1 abstention, so it becomes part of the motion. Now, Alex, you wanted to raise something?
Yes. Request that staff recommend to presenters to send their presentation or supporting documentation 24 hours before the meeting.
You got that, Robin?
No, start again. So who was this?
This is Alex. Alex is moving a further amendment.
Thank you. And it's, could you just repeat those words?
Yes.
I'll get it all down properly later, but if you could just say it again. Thanks.
Request staff ask, deputations, and public forum participants. Send presentations and any supporting information 24 hours in advance
I'd like to second that, please.
of
Robin.
business meetings. Thank you, Robin.
And that was seconded by
Adriana.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure of all your names, so I'll have to just do this a bit later.
All good, all
You can
good.
put in surnames later, that's fine. So
Yeah,
you want to
thank
speak
you.
to that, Alex?
Yes, it may not be appropriate for standing orders, but I think it will lead to better outcomes for us. It will probably lead to just a greater chance of presentations appearing accurately on screen when they're supposed to. And we can also be just much more confident about what we're receiving if we get the information a bit in advance. It doesn't preclude tabling things later, but it does mean that we can receive table information with far more confidence if we've had a look at it, and we'll ask better questions, and it will just help us with our decision making.
Thank you. Adriana?
I want to tautoko what Alex just said. Personally, we go through extensive readings with the agenda and we know what we're about to discuss. It would be pretty helpful if we can do the same with our public forums. And, I just felt like saying that's why we're trying to do the community clinics, so that we can have a longer amount of time and really tease things out with members of the public. And I'd really encourage for people to use this as another avenue of communications with the local board.
Thank you. I will be voting against.
Can I just make a suggestion? Sorry,
Who's
but
this?
just that's Robin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just because the DA prepares all this material, etc., that if you say request staff ask, it means it's a bit ambiguous. But if you say request staff, the word's just gone out of my mind now. Request staff ask deputation that require deputation and public forum participants send presentations. So it might just mean it's a bit more formal, like rather than ask, you can ask, but you might not get.
I sort of think,
Alex.
well, yes. I think, though, that might be slightly contradicting the other part of the amendment. I get the impression that the chair would like people to be able to bring things to the meeting. But I'm just suggesting, if it's policy to ask for things in advance, it'll just be better outcomes for us all. But yeah.
Through the chair, can I suggest something? I guess instead of request staff, could we use note that this is a preferred option for the board, or a preferred approach that information is received 24 hours in advance, so that members of the public will understand that this is a preferred. However, they don't have to provide the information 24 hours in advance.
Yes.
The moment,
that's fine.
Okay.
So what do you want to say?
Request staff advise deputations of public forum participants. That it is the board's preference to receive.
Okay.
Thank you. Carlos, does that sound all right in your view?
Yes. Yep. That sounds
That's
okay.
great.
Okay. Well, that's probably, I'm no longer fiercely opposed to that, because it's essentially what we have been doing, and the staff and I have been gentle with people who haven't been able to manage it, and sometimes that's because they only become aware it's on the agenda very soon before. So as long as it's accepted that some people won't be able to meet that requirement, but certainly very helpful if we do have it that far in advance, so we can get our questions sorted, get advice from staff about whether the proposals are realistic. So I won't vote against this in that form. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Graham Gunthorpe, I'm the same. I would have voted if it was against it if it was compulsory, but the fact we're just asking to supply 24 in advance, I think that is completely fair. And if parties aren't able to, they don't have to. So fine in my book.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. That's carried. We come back to the substantive resolution. I don't think I need to speak on it again. So we'll put the substantive as amended. All those in favour will say aye.
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 Contrary, no. That's carried. We'll now take a 5-minute break and resume at 4:16.